Hey guys, welcome back to the Revive Stronger channel. I'm your host as always, Steve Hall, and today we have another exciting roundup takeaways from the podcast with our very only Miguel Blacutt, episode 136. So let's get straight into this. It seems as though mechanical tension plus muscle damage seems to be a non-significant difference between that and just mechanical tension on its own. And so it's not entirely clear that muscle damage is actually a driver for hypertrophy at all. Takeaway point number 2 is really pertinent, guys, in that too much muscle damage can actually blunt the hypertrophic response that we are looking for. And so it's important to provide sufficient stress to create an overload so that we warrant an adaptation to provide muscle growth, but we don't want a huge one so that we can't actually recover in time and adapt and progress. So one example of this might be to gradually, progressively overload, such as like adding maybe a repetition, some load on the bar, or even a set. Takeaway point number 3, and if you haven't seen it yet, Miguel has now released, or we have released the article on the website for CBD oil and whether or not it's worth an investment. And the takeaway point from the podcast was currently there aren't that many studies, especially on populations relevant to us. So right now, we're not sure if it's worth the investment, but I definitely would check out that full post that's now available on our website. Takeaway point number 4 is when it's the holidays or you're on holiday in another country or visiting somewhere, it's probably prudent for you to do the thing that causes you the least amount of stress. That's quite important to think about because every single person's individual and has their own stresses and have their own things that set them off. So for example, tracking might be something that is very stressful for you and so isn't a good idea during your holiday. Whereas someone else might be in a scenario where they need some element of control to have less stress. So have a think about that when you're next having a holiday period. The last takeaway point from this podcast is that if you're relatively lean, for a male that's like under 20% body fat or so, for a female under like 32% body fat or so, you're lifting regularly, say 3 times per week at least, you do not need to spend any extra money on any sort of supplements that might improve your insulin sensitivity, or at least say they're going to improve it. You're insulin sensitive enough. So guys, that is the takeaway points from the podcast. I hope you actually go and check out the whole episode. We really would like you to. And thank you for listening. So guys, before you go, I want to give you our favorite quote from today's podcast. And that is, if you are tracking your blood glucose, you may well be tracking something that you have absolutely no control over in the short term. So guys, hope you've enjoyed this takeaway from the podcast. As always, like it, subscribe, give us a comment, give us a share, tag us over on Instagram. That'd be very much welcomed. As always, Revive Stronger. Take care.